Okay, so we are about to start a demo of a Quickweave closure. I have already prepped my model for what we are about to do. One of the main benefits for a Quickweave closure is that we are protecting the client's hair with the cap that you see on. Most of the people nowadays are natural, so with it being a closure on there, we can protect the integrity of their hair by having the closure on. So as you see, I already have a cap on her head. The reason we chose this one is because it is the closest color to her skin tone. That's going to be very, very important once we put that closure on, because we need that to match up under there. We have also added on some makeup to camouflage once we put the closure on. So once you do this step, braiding your client down, moisturizing under the scalp, and completing the cap, then we will move on to where we are going to bleach the knots on the closure to prepare to lay it down. Here is our HD lace closure, and as you can see, there are little tiny knots on here. That is what we are trying to get away. So what you want to do is smooth the hair back and flip it over. Once you flip it over, again, make sure that you smooth that hair back, that way the lightener does not press through. So I already have my powder in here, and I'm going to take this developer and mix it in. I'm going to start off with just a little bit and mix that up, and then we'll see if we need more. When you're mixing, you are looking for a very, very thick consistency. If you make it too watery, that is what is going to make it bleed through on the closure. So as you can see, I'm mixing, and it's a little too dusty. Like, you can still see how clumpy that is. So I'm just going to mix a little more, and then I'm going to finish mixing. So I like to use a plastic knife to check my consistency. One of the ways to check is to make sure that the lightener is not falling off of the knife. So this lets us know it's going to start applying. So once applying, you want to start at the top of your closure, lay that on there, and then just pull lightly to the back. Pull lightly to the back. You do not want this to seep through. And if you have to press up, just take what is already on there and press it up more. I choose this over actually using the brush, because most of the time the bristles of the brush will start to make you press a little harder than what we want. So the knife is works better. And I'm going to back up to the top where I'm missing. And you do this all the way until the closure is completely covered with the lightener. And you can see me going side to side. That's because I'm kind of used to it. But when you first start, you definitely want to just pull to the back. And this is about how we want it to be. Once you finish doing that, we're going to flip the closure back over. This also prevents the lightener from bleeding through. And then you'll take your other piece of foil that we have down here, which I already pre-cut. Lay that right on top. Fold those sides to keep the heat. And we're gonna let that process for 20 minutes. Okay, so while your closure is processing, we are gonna go ahead and start with our Quickweave. So I would highly suggest you asking your clients to bring the closure in prior to the service. That way it is already prepped and ready to go. But if they don't do that, we can go ahead and start the process. So we're gonna go ahead and open up our bundles, begin laying our tracks, and I will come back when I have half of the back done for you. Okay, so now that our closure has processed, we are ready to go to our next step, which will be us laying the closure and applying our adhesive. So what I like to do is go ahead and lay my first layer of adhesive, because you're going to need at least 3 layers of it in order for it to bond and stay in place. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that first layer, and then I'm going to show you what our closure looks like. So what I'm gonna do is lay a couple dots across the front of her hairline, and then I'm gonna take my finger and just smooth that right on down, connecting where the cap ends and like a little tiny bit behind it, because this is where we want our first layer to be. And we're gonna stay right there for our next 2 layers. So we go back with our dots, taking our finger and just smoothing that down. One of the main things to remember is not to have any bubbles, and also making sure that the layer that you put down is completely clear before going into your next one. So while we're waiting on our adhesive to dry, this is what our closure looks like. This is a HD closure, and it's usually very thin where the lace is to help it melt better. So as you can see, we got the knots out, but it's still kind of white. So another important step that you want to do is make sure that you have a lace tint of whatever company you like to use, and make sure that it matches your client. We're gonna spray that on the back, giving it a more realistic look and texture match for our closure. And we're gonna let that dry, go ahead and put our last layer of adhesive on, and then we'll be ready to lay the closure down. So it's really important to make sure that your clients feel comfortable and that you know what you're doing. So you wanna make the most of your time. So while that is drying, you wanna go ahead, get your blow dryer and kind of dry that tint out so that we're not wasting any time. So now we're ready to apply our closure. We have our 3rd layer of adhesive already here, and it's starting to clear up. So what you saw me do, I cut the flaps off right here because this will allow it to lay flatter and not cause any bulkiness on the side. So that's another key thing. Well, it's actually optional if you decide to do that. I prefer to do that. So now that I have my closure and my adhesive where I want it, I'm literally just going to go right in front of it and lay my closure exactly where I want it, stretching it out just a tad bit and laying it right on there. We're not gonna do any pulling or tugging on it. We're gonna leave it just like that, and we're gonna spread the hair apart and then begin gluing our closure around the perimeter. You also have the option of doing sew around the perimeter. You can ask your client which they prefer. Today, I'm going to glue around the perimeter. If you see or notice that you have excess lace and you have more room to lay it here, you see she has a little hair right here. So what I'm gonna do is split that hair, put a little tap right around the edges of it, smooth that out with my finger, and then lay that right on down, pressing that in. And if you see any white coming up, just do not disturb it while it is under there, because if you touch it, it'll start to make more white happen. So we're just gonna leave that there, and we'll come back and clean it up with powder or doing our baby hair process. So now that we have laid our closure down and put our glue around the perimeter of it, we're going to go ahead and pin this out of the way so that we can continue putting the rest of our tracks, just laying literally in the direction that you want it to go. So her part is gonna go this way, so we're gonna make sure that this side is very full and this side will be the more thinner side because you want it to be flat. You don't want a whole bunch of tracks up here, then it won't look very natural. So now that I've pinned this out the way, the next step that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this Sinex strip. You also can use a lace band. A lot of people have custom lace bands, or you can purchase them from your local beauty supply store. And we just wanna make sure that that closure is really seeping in and adhering to her skin, looking very flat. So I haven't cut off any lace, it's still here. I'm gonna take this band, lay it right there, leaving me a little room to still glue. And I'm gonna tie this behind her ear. Make sure you ask your client, is it too tight or is it loose? You know, you want them to be comfortable while you're doing this process. It's not just about hair, but this is an experience for your client. So make sure you're talking to them throughout the process. So now that I have my strip laid, I'm gonna go ahead and finish laying all the tracks, and I will be right back, and we're gonna head into styling. So now that we have completed putting our tracks in, repeating the exact same steps we did in the back, we're gonna go ahead and go right here and take our clip out, and we're gonna put our part exactly where we want it to be. So I'm taking my comb and putting my part exactly where I want it to be. So as you can see, we have a very natural and realistic look of a scalp, which is what you get when you bleach the knots. And we're gonna go ahead and proceed with styling the hair. So as you're styling, if you notice that the hair is not laying as flat as you want it to be, another tip that you can do is take your foam. It could be any brand that you like. I'm using Influence today. And you literally just squirt that on the closure and lay it in the direction that you would want it to go. And it's okay if you saturate it. Make sure you really get in there, part it, so that these hairs lay flat. One thing about closures is they lay them in the direction that they want them to go, but we can make adjustments to it. And that's what we're doing right now. Now that is giving me the desired flatness that I want, I'm gonna take my hand dryer and blow dry that, or you can opt to sit your client under the dryer for a few minutes, and then I'll proceed to the styling portion. Now that we have put it like exactly where we want it, I'm gonna go into the styling portion. We're gonna do some loose curls today, have it looking very natural. We're gonna lay some baby hairs, and we will be done with our quick weave. When styling your quick weaves, you can choose what's best for your clients. Some people like flat iron curls, some people like wand curls, some people like crimps. Remember to always consider your client first and give them what they want. So we are going to do some curls with our flat iron today, just for natural. So now when you are considering styling your client's hair, you want to make sure you have a thorough conversation with your client for the look that we are going. You can also do barrel curls, you can also do crimps. There are a lot of different styles that are out. Now remember, when charging your clients, you can choose to go up or down depending on what it is that they are getting done. They're called specialty styles. So if crimps are your specialty, they're gonna have to pay a little extra for that style. So remember that tip. Okay, now that you have completed your styling, the last thing we need to do is go ahead and cut our lace and lay our baby hairs. If your client decides that they do not want it, you'll literally cut and you will be done. But today we're gonna do just a little bit. So with the little flap that's left here, you're gonna make a little cut with your shears. And because we don't want that line to be super straight, we're gonna use one of these razors, and we're gonna go along her hairline and cut the excess lace off. Make sure to be very careful on this part, making sure not to cut your client. You can even tilt the lace back a little bit to see exactly where you need to cut. Having excess lace is perfectly fine, and you want to press that in to whatever adhesive you still have left there. And then we're going to repeat that on the opposite side. Pulling this lace back and cutting. And again, pressing into the skin, whatever excess lace we have left. So lastly, I am going to take my edge brush, where it's a brush on this side and a comb on this side. I'm going to use some lace jelly. This is can be used just to put your lace down or to lay baby hairs. Today we're going to lay it. So what I like to do is just put a little bit on the back of my hand so that I have control of it. Pulling out just a little bit of hair here because we want it to look very very natural. Laying it directly on the lace and the hair. And we're just going to curve those baby hairs in the direction we want them to go. This also helps with longevity of your lace staying down because you're putting a little more adhesive on the lace and the hair. And do not rush it. If you see you need to fix something, go ahead and fix it, because it's better to do it now before it dries. Once it dries and you try to pull it up, that's when you'll see white build up, and that is not what we want. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side. Now, because our product is a little wet, we're going to take our blow dryer and we're going to dry that in a little bit just to set it and pull it all in together. Another tip to have when doing a closure, if you notice that your client's makeup or the complexion of their skin is darker or lighter than what the lace is, you also can keep you some concealer nearby. Make sure you have all shades, and you want to keep you a brush. Just dab it in the concealer closest to their skin tone, and you want to tap that along the front hairline. Once that is complete, you go ahead and do your finishing touches with your holding spray and your oil sheen, making sure your client hair stays intact, and you have successfully completed your quick weave closure.